totally in my head right now, so I am speaking as if there's nobody here, but I know there are. So in about 2 minutes, I will probably melt back into reality. But in the meantime, hi. It's all abstract. So we're going to start this by saying thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for all the support for all the years. And what we're going to do in the beginning of this is we're going to do a Q&A, and that'll go for about half an hour, and then we can sign from there and take photos, and then we're going to do a group photo upstairs. So I would like to start the proceedings, awkwardly as I do, by asking if anybody has a question. Yes, sir.
How was the show yesterday?
Fun.
I want to ask you, not taking into consideration the audience, did you deliver what you worked for the past 10 years?
Yes. However, it's a work in progress, and that's not to downplay where it sits currently. It's just that the vision is such that it could go infinitely, well, maybe not infinitely, but or perhaps, but it could just continue to expand. So it's not that I'm in any way, shape, or form feeling like it is under delivering, but it also makes me realize how much more can be done with it. So I realized last night that I still got some lyrics to write. so there'll be mumbling going on throughout tonight, yeah. And if you could just do me the favor and assume that what I'm saying makes a modicum of sense, that would be extremely helpful. Yes, sir.
So I heard you spoke about how you have synesthesia.
Mm.
What images or such do you visualize with this project?
The whole idea with MOTH, to underline the idea of a transition to a different type of life that includes the recognition of what is truly important to me at this age, required the front half of it to be apocalyptic. And as a result of that, the colors is just it's like a lot of colors. But it's a lot of black, I think, in the first part, right? But I think that, again, if you're going to try and make an analogy for any part of your psychological growth or creative process, it needs to be overt enough to try and put that energy across. So I remember when I first started thinking about the project, I was more concerned about oh shit, this is going to be a lot of work. This is going to require a lot of logistical oversight, etc. Not oversight, the other one. And when we were up there last night, I was more than anything else, I was just proud of the team, because it's a huge amount of people that bring this together, and the fact that everybody did pull together and we created something that ultimately I think we feel is constructive rather than destructive. That's where the pride came on stage last night. It's like, oh shit, it's actually worked. It did. Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir.
You say you take this as a complete line of your life.
Mm.
Is that also the time of the starting new lab?
Well, it's all a part of it, because the process, I think, again, I paraphrase with any of these sort of philosophical things that I bring up because I'm not well versed enough in them to be confident. But the idea of integrating the part of your personality that at one time you were in opposition to, I think they call it shadow work, the idea of being able to reconcile your own internal dialogue so that it's working together as opposed to against itself. And that process includes strapping. And I think not necessarily the music or the band, but the energy, because I think I've spent many years trying to suppress that part of me, but for the wrong reasons. I think it's okay to suppress it because there's a distinction to be made between having a thought and acting on it. But the integration of that into the creative trip required facing it, I believe. And I guess ultimately that's what this is about.
When you released the Dream Piece project 2 years ago, it was really amazing. I noticed on the website the albums were subdivided into sort of tracks with really interesting titles. Did those come about in the same way like the titles of the puzzle and Snuggles came about, or was that a
I think lyrics and titles often are like a mixed bag of success for me. Like there's sometimes where I will hold off on naming something till the very end, and then it just ends up being called the working title. And a lot of those times are just like single words, right? Like life or stagnant or whatever. But with the Dream Piece stuff, I like the idea, and continuing with that project as we will, of course. I like the idea that you kind of have they're not song titles as much as just like a statement that you can read sequentially. But again, there's no real overarching theme to it as much as just like, that's more about expression, that one, I believe.
Yeah, okay, cool, thanks.
Yes.
So considering the vastness of your back catalogue, do you think this is like the purest form of your creativity? And if so, where do you go from here?
I think it's the final form of this particular era. And where I go from here, part of learning to respect yourself, I believe, also includes recognizing the ways in which your patterns no longer serve you. And for me, so much of it has been people pleasing and figuring that my identity was so heavily invested in my work that in absence of that, I have nothing to offer. But you know, I'm like in my mid-50s now, and kids and parents and dogs and wife and all these sorts of things. And as we get older, those are the things that certainly are where I would want to put my energy. And music is the byproduct of a process. It's not the foundation of any of this, you know, so that's my thought. Yes, sir. Yes, yeah.
Do you have any parts of your work, like songs or albums, that you feel like didn't get the response that you expect?
Maybe Puzzle, but only because in hindsight, when I listened to it, the thing that I was so fascinated by with that project was that particular process, which was, I was just so intrigued by the way that came about, where it was about maybe control. Puzzle, because it was in the midst of the pandemic, and how that conceptually came about was everybody in my life that wanted to participate can do whatever they want to it, and then my role is to try and structure it in a way that it's all represented, and that their end result is chaos. But the process was fascinating, because I remember this one guy on Puzzle, he had spent like a ton of time recording vocals and harmonies and all this sort of stuff. And another friend of mine was a lady, and she had just learned guitar, and she picked it up and it was all out of tune. And I split that part between the two of them, and he was just like, and I was like, well, because she's my buddy too, you know what I mean? It's like, it's pandemic, it's about the people, it's not about the contribution, really. And so, in hindsight, it surprises me, not in the least, that it was accepted as being this oddity. But with my own feelings on it, I was just so interested in the way that came about, and in many ways that informed Moth. So the process was really the thing about that one. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'd just like to say that I've done VIP with you a bunch of times since Via Thread, and I've done VIP with a bunch of other bands as well, and you are consistently the most generous person with your time and attention to do this.
Well,
so for that and for everything else you've done over the years, we got you a little something.
Oh,
Enjoy.
I got a present. Are you kidding me? Axel. It's Lexin. So that's the name of the character in the mod, Lexin. So thank you, dude. This is, there you go, goosebumps. I would like to say as well, though, I don't like leaving my house. You know, I don't, I mean, playing, my hope with the Moth is eventually somebody else will sing it. Other people will sing it. Because I want to point out that in accordance to what you just said, I come out here because of the audience, because the support. I get to do what I want to do because of you guys. And so it's absurd to me to not spend the time. It just doesn't make sense.
You've got a lot of things to think about at the same time.
We all do though,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, and thank you though, I appreciate that. But at the same time, everybody, parents, and the world, and everything. It's like we've all got so much shit going on, but you know, we're all kind of in the same boat in a lot of ways, and you know, it's reciprocal, is what I'm trying to say. And thank you so much for the compliment and for this. Yeah, thank you, brother.
One more for the stage.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I got another
Oh,
one. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I've been learning, like, trying to learn all your songs on guitar. And it's really fun to notice you use a lot of different tunings, like throughout the years in certain periods. I was always curious if you remember, like, the AAA tuning used on Physicist and a few other songs, because it's really specific. Did that came from a certain, like, influence, or just?
I dropped my guitar, and then when I picked it up, it was in that tuning. Because at that time I had a ESP Explorer that had a bolt-on neck, but it was so flimsy that if you drop it, it would just go brump and it would go out of tune. And then I was like, and then it was and it was just based on that. And then I used it again on Physicist until I realized that it's a really uncomfortable and impractical tuning. Same thing happened for song Kauai from Ghost.
Yeah.
And I never remember the tuning, so we've had to play, or we've been asked to play Ghost material in that song on several occasions, and each time I'm like, I don't remember the tuning. But I have one phone message that I had mailed myself when I wrote it because I knew I would forget it, and then Gmail is just such a pain in the ass that I can never find it, so I have to figure out the timing and when it was happening, and then every time I find that mail again and put the guitar in tune, I think to myself, you should be smart about this and write this down yet.
Well, one last question. What's it like playing with like a whole orchestra of like 80 people?
Well, I find that my tendency to be overstimulated by life in general is worse and worse as I get older. So my technique to try and navigate this in a way that allows me to focus on it and not be overwhelmed by it is to be nonchalant about it. So my plan is to process it on the flight home. Yes.
Oh, now you've picked me, and I realize my question is like really stupid. But it's just something I've been curious about for ages. So I've been lucky that you've been able to visit my country.
I remember you were from Perth.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you gave me that book with the butterflies in it. It was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh my god. Insane.
Yeah.
Okay, so and normally when bands come a really long way and they come to Australia, they go to like the main cities. But I've seen a couple of interviews from the 90s where you mentioned coming over and going to a small town called Wagga Wagga.
Wagga Wagga.
Why? What about that struck such a chord with you? Because I love it. I love hearing stories about where people have visited.
Well, I asked to do that one actually because it was the first time there, and I think it was 95 or 96 was the first time, and I may be mistaken, but it wasn't as prevalent back then where international bands on the metal circuit would come there. And we had just finished doing this, like, opening up for Testament in America, and just people just like hating our guts. And the whole time I was just like, oh, fuck you, or whatever. And then when we got to Australia, my whole shtick didn't work because everybody was there. And there was people, and they really liked it for the first time. And I was like, but it screwed me up because I didn't know what to say on stage anymore. I had this whole thing about being antagonistic towards the audience, and I was like, thank you, or whatever. But we asked AJ, who was our promoter down there then and still is, I said, I've never been there. I would like to play in a place that no one else has ever played. And we did that entire tour. We weren't in hotels. It was the whole band and the crew in a hostel. So we would drive between cities because they don't have sleeper vans in Australia and at the time. And the distance between cities was something like 30 hours. So we were in this van for 30 hours going to a hostel. And then when we were driving on like the 5th day, we went through this place and there was like a gas station, and we stopped. And I was like, okay, well, how long are we here for? And they're like, no, this is the place. And they had these PAs set up on beer kegs in the back room, and there was like a kangaroo's head, like no shit, hanging off the wall. And I remember thinking, this is fucking awesome.
That's sick, I love that.
Anybody else? You had a question?
What activities do you engage in to recharge your batteries after such a concert?
I watch videos of trains. And in fact, on the stage, there's a
video of a
tiny,
train.
there's a tiny little screen while I'm playing that's got a train going, like the whole time, like right in front of me. And I mean, I'm so easily overstimulated. It's a liability, right? It's the job description that 18-year-old me read for this type of work resonates much differently in your mid-50s when, you know, I'm overstimulated by sound, smell, everything. And so a lot of going on tour for me is like, how do you psychologically protect yourself while still being, you know, present enough to listen? And I can do it for short periods of time, but it costs, you know what I mean? So it's like every hour I'm social, I need an hour or two on my own. And I take baths. Like, that hotel we're in right now doesn't have a bath, and it's really nice. It's got, you know, shower and everything, but I'm like, I tried to make a trough last night. I brought all these towels out and made this moat and I just flooded the bathroom. And so not only was it not relaxing, it was quite the opposite. But I really enjoy sitting. Like, for real. It's funny, hearing it out loud, yeah, it is a little strange, but it's like, I love just sitting down. I'm getting better at it. Anybody else have a question? Yes?
Do you already have plans to release, and how and when and in which format and all that? Like,
With Moth?
Yeah, this massive thing.
So we've got, the record is finished. We mix it in June 10th until the end of June. It goes into mastering in July. We've recorded the orchestra and choir separately. I'm going to do a version of it with just my voice, orchestra and choir. And the release of that is TBA because we're still negotiating the logistics of that. But bottom line is it's done, right? I just have to write those lyrics for those 3 parts, and I'm gonna look away tonight, be like, huh.
And what about the video recording from tonight?
Yeah, so the idea for this, ultimately, is if Moth gets performed again, these 2 shows act as a proof of concept, essentially. So, because up to this point it's been self-funded. Thank you, Power Nerd, actually. That's the reason why that record, because I couldn't finish this without that. But as a result of that, as a proof of concept after this weekend, if this is meant to be played again, then this is what I was referring to earlier in terms of how far we could take it. But I feel pragmatic enough that if it's not meant to be, then I'm not going to waste any time on it because there's a million things that can be done. But if it proves itself something that can be and should be done again, all of the production, all the video, all these things will be taken to a whole other level, because the idea with it is that it's supposed to be a really sort of different type of operatic thing, you know?
Right.
So we'll see again.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Is really stupid question.
Not at all.
Is there a moment in your life that you say it's enough?
Yeah, about 3 months ago. And I'm not, but it's okay. It's okay, because I think the byproduct of the decisions that are rooted in accepting yourself is this sort of thing, for me at least. And if the trajectory creatively leads us in that direction, then I'm thankful for it. You know, I've always been a proponent of the thought that the goal of an artist is to run out of things to say, you know, because I think that on some level, for me at least, art functions as a need for validation. And I think that as I get older, when that no longer resonates in the way that it does, making an analogy or a metaphor out of that process, if we're fortunate, yields things that aren't rooted in just constant consumption, right? Because my life is so busy, it's got so much shit in it. But, you know, it's like people passing away over the past couple of years, you look at it and you're just like, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so fortunate to be here. And how many more years have I got? 25 or 30? And I have no intention of being a martyr for the work. You know, the idea of the work is like, if you can utilize the process in order to find some sort of sense of closure within yourself and your family, then that's where it's a success. And MOTH acts as a representation of that transition. Hey. Any other questions? Oh, yes, sir.
When you were 16, 17, what bands were you listening to?
16, 17. King's X, Metallica, Judas Priest, Enya.
Wow.
Yeah, so I loved Watermark more than any record as a teen. I bought probably 10 copies of that. And it was, and I liked some of her other stuff, but a lot of it was very sugary. But that record was really impactful to me. It's like the production and the scale of it. And Def Leppard as well. And it wasn't, clearly I wasn't as interested in the lyrical sides of things at that point. But production-wise, Hysteria was a total game changer. But at the same time, I think, no, probably not that early. But I was very much into film soundtracks and everything as well too, right? So, and yeah, I think that's it, 15, 16, that was a while back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Just really curious about
It's
something.
okay.
I once read a very believable rumor that after recording the vocals for Happy Camper on Heavy as a Really Heavy Thing, that you passed out. Is that true? Or?
I passed out last week. Yeah, I got an infection while we were working on MOTH, and I had to call Ben at 2 in the morning, took me to the hospital, and passed out on the way. And they kept me in overnight and put me on morphine, and I was just like, I woke up going, man, I should get an infection more often, this feels great. So I think that the passing out thing for me is less of an anomaly and more of just something to navigate.
So it's quite the intense.
Yeah, but I mean, dude, life's intense, right? It's like, I think, rather than like wanting to view life as like, I want to grab it by the balls and jump out of an airplane or whatever, I think it's just more about, I really love it, and I'm so grateful for this experience. It's insane, like it's insane to be alive, right? And the work represents that, but it's only up until recently where I recognize that the same intensity that might cause one to pass out can be channeled elsewhere, you know? And yeah, I also passed out during MOTH too, so.
I remember I was watching you at an acoustic show in London, I think St. James's Church or something, and you told the story about how the title of Physicist became about.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to double check, was this true? Because all the years I was in, he was just telling a joke.
Can you remind me?
No, then.
I honestly.
You said something about you had a cat named Fizzy.
Oh, Fizzy, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
And then you said she died horribly.
Yeah, it did. It was awful. Yeah, it was awful.
So it's not true.
No, it was true. So Physicist happened at a period where we were going through like a rebuilding, I guess, between my wife and I. But at the same time, we had gotten a cat at the time, which I guess, in a sense, was indicative of it. And at that time as well, I think, you know, my tendency to go down rabbit holes mentally back then was much less controlled than it is now. And I was kind of fascinated by the idea of geometry and physics and everything. Then we had kids, and I realized, I was like, the arrogance of thinking that you knew anything is shocking. So Physicist was a great moment to be like, I think I know shit, and the next day you're like, oh, no, I don't even, what do you want me to lift? You know?
I mean, those times were different, right? The also like first strapping show or something, I remember you came on stage, turned your back around, and then you just pulled down your shorts and stuff. It was such a crazy time.
Well,
and now seeing you here, you know, you're such a normal dude.
Well, my ass is no longer what it was, right? Even then it was no swing in hell, but now it just looks like two elbows pressing together.
All these phones.
Yeah, right? All the phones, yeah. Any other questions, anybody? Yes? I'm sorry, are you connected to who?
Elizabeth Sarah.
Oh yeah, she's great. Well, I mean, in that regard, so I had planned to go down on March 2nd to be with Elizabeth, who runs a YouTube channel called The Charismatic Voice, and they're going to stick a tube up my nose and make me yell at something and see what it looked like or something, which is daunting. But then because we have to leave for the Moth, which we've put all this time and effort into, I called her and said, you know, of the times in my life that it may be prudent for me to not have something shoved into my vocal cords, now would probably be it. So I postponed it, and then we'll look at it in the future.
Well, one more question, guys.
Yes, sir.
Hey, it's me.
Hey.
A question regarding the writing process of the MOTH. You've done some, let's say, smaller fragments of orchestration in the past, like for Earth Day or Y. So, was this, I mean, this obviously was pretty much different with a huge orchestra like this. Was there something specific pointing out or some learnings from this whole process of creation?
Delegating. For real. Because I think that the strength of a team comes from, if you have an idea that you want to articulate, you're much better suited, in my opinion, to hire people who are better than you at, for example, I don't read music, so I'll write it, but for me to try and be better at the job of like scoring it, you know, writing it down after, than somebody like Tom Kelly, who is involved with this, would be just arrogant, right? Because it's like I'm just trying to prove that I can do that. But if you get it, I always think of like when I was a kid, not because I was a nerd or anything, but we used to play Dungeons and Dragons. And but I remember the whole idea of creating a strong team is the strengths and weaknesses fill it out. So as opposed to everybody's artistically inclined, you need someone who's artistically inclined, somebody who's business minded, somebody who can, and you delegate those tasks. And by doing that, you can articulate these visions in a way that are far beyond what your capacity to do it on your own would be. Plus, you don't come into it like completely exhausted. I mean, you're exhausted, but comparatively to some of the other things where I felt like some sort of personal investment in proving that I could do all these tasks, you know? So when it comes to the orchestration for this, the process is I write it in Pro Tools, and I play it on keyboard with MIDI, I sing all the choir parts, and then I send it to people. And I'm like, that's how it goes. I don't speak the choir and the orchestra's language, like, and clearly. So with that, having it articulated professionally by somebody who does that for a living, we've got this perfect score that took the ideas, and now we have something that in the past I would have never thought that that was the thing. So this is why the team is so important, right? So thank you guys. I think the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna sign stuff. So Josh, you wanna lead it?
Next thing we're gonna do is raffle off a really nice easel guitar.
The next thing we're gonna do